Welcome back, my dear followers. This is a new episode of The History of the American Mafia, a podcast written by Fabio Fabiano, translated and read by Grace Carlisi. This is part 4 of a 5-part series on Lucky Luciano. Luciano, who ended up in prison with a sentence of 30 to 50 years to serve, was always determined to get out, and the start of the Second World War offered him that opportunity. On December the 7th, 1941, Japan launched an air attack on the US Navy base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, and from that moment on, America was at war. The conflict increased illegal income from the underworld, with a rise in clandestine gambling and the black market. The American government intensified the war effort at the expense of mafia investigations, feared that enemy powers would try to sabotage Eastern American seaports, and that Italian-American dock workers might secretly support Benito Mussolini. Furthermore, thanks to the German U-boot submarines, saboteurs landed on Long Island in Florida, but luckily were arrested. The US Navy's Secret Service, Unit B3, began to investigate. They soon realized that New York Harbor was controlled entirely by the mafia. Therefore, the officers, together with the New York prosecutor's men, who had investigated organized crime, met with the person in charge of all illegal activities at the port. He was Joseph Lanza, also known as Picchia Sodo, which literally means fight hard, and we can all imagine how he got that nickname. In addition of being the leader of the Maritime and Port Workers Union, he was also recognized as one of the leaders of the mafia family led by Costello and Luciano. Lanza met secretly with the commander of the Navy's intelligence service and reported that he would inform his bosses. An agreement was made with the temporary leader of his mafia family, Frank Costello. An aide from the New York prosecutor's office contacted Lucky Luciano's attorney, Moses Polakov, and Meyer Lansky to submit the request for cooperation. To give a signal of goodwill to initiate negotiations, the government had Luciano, who had been imprisoned in a distant prison in Dannemora, a town on the Canadian border, transferred to a much nearer prison in Comstock, about 100 kilometers from Albany, a location that was easy to reach for both Costello and Lanza in order to visit Luciano. Before his arrest, Luciano had little interest in the port, but many of his men and other Irish crime bosses and criminals who owed him favours made themselves available. Luciano asked Mayor Lansky to bring the message of his desire to support the Navy's secret services out of prison. He, as head of the family, and the representatives of other New York families agreed. Therefore, the mafia gave their approval, and so the American ports were made safe from possible acts of sabotage from the enemy. It was also agreed that during the war, no trade union would proclaim strikes or states of unrest to contribute to the war effort. A true undercover military operation began. The port workers monitored and reported any sign of danger or suspicious people wandering around the docks to the heads of the mafia families. The dockers' trade union provided false membership cards to the service agents so they could easily infiltrate amongst the workers at the port. This allowed them to keep all activities under observation and find any saboteurs or supporters of the fascist or Nazi regime. This was Operation Underworld. Luciano's cooperation with the American government didn't end with the Operation Underworld. It is said he helped the US Army invade his homeland Sicily, participating in Operation Husky. Some Sicilians, pushed by the mafiosi, collaborated with the secret services, describing port maps or showing photographs. Before the end of the war, Luciano tried to obtain the benefits promised by the Secret Service officials. Following the rejection of his first request in 1943, he presented yet another one in 1945 to the governor, explicitly citing his collaboration with the naval intelligence. This caused some embarrassment for the secret services, who didn't openly admit the collaboration. The prosecutor's office, however, confirmed the statements, and the Council of State was in favour of granting parole. He therefore suggested to the governor to release Luciano, extradite him immediately. In 1946, Thomas Dewey, the prosecutor, who had had an active part in Luciano's conviction, in the meantime had become governor of the state of New York. He granted the gangster a pardon for his war services, but given his massive criminal influence, the American government was unwilling to let him go free in the United States. He was thus expelled to Italy on the condition that if he returned to the USA, he would be treated as an escaped prisoner and would have served his entire sentence, and therefore would have been imprisoned for 50 years. On February the 10th, 1946, Luciano set sail aboard a cargo ship for Italy. Many mafiosis, including Costello, taking advantage of the syndicate's cover, managed to board the ship and participate in a sumptuous farewell banquet given in Luciano's honour.